Imagine being on the front lines of one of history's most famous battles, where the ground shakes with the thunder of hooves, the clash of steel fills the air, and gunfire rings out like rolling thunder. Now picture seeing it all unfold through the eyes of a Native American scout, one who saw everything firsthand. This is the untold fact of young Hawk and the shocking truths of Custer's last stand. Welcome back to EyeRich History, where we uncover the real histories behind pivotal moments in Native American history. In this video, we talked about a perspective rarely heard in the history books, young Hawk's chilling first-hand account of the Battle of Little Bighorn, also known as Custer's last stand. While this battle has been endlessly dissected, analyzed, and debated in historical circles, what remains underrepresented is the perspective of the Native American scouts who stood on the front lines, witnessing it all. Today, we bring that untold story to light. Young Hawk played a crucial role as a scout for General George Armstrong Custer during that fateful summer day in June 1876. While Custer and his 7th Cavalry charged toward what they believed was a small encampment, it was men like young Hawk who observed the true strength of the Sioux and Cheyenne forces awaiting them. His account brings us closer to the intense chaos, bravery, and bloodshed that unfolded on the battlefield. But beyond that, young Hawk's narrative sets the record straight on what really happened, unraveling the myths and legends that have surrounded Custer's last stand for decades. Stay with us as we explore young Hawk's story, a tale of bravery and tragedy, as well as his impact on how history remembers this pivotal moment. Get ready, because the truth behind Custer's defeat is more shocking than any legend you've heard. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This way you won't miss another powerful and revealing story about Native American history, culture, and legacy. Now let's get started. The Battle of Little Bighorn, fought on June 25–26, 1876, was one of the most infamous and significant clashes between the U.S. Army and Native American forces. On one side stood the formidable 7th Cavalry, led by General George Armstrong Custer, a man who had gained fame as a Civil War hero and had been tasked with subduing native resistance in the West. On the other side was a coalition of Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors, fierce and determined to defend their people, their lands, and their way of life. But caught in the middle were Native American scouts like young Hawk, an Iroquois man who, along with other native scouts, had been recruited to work with Custer's army. These scouts had a unique and often tragic role, as they found themselves walking the fine line between cultures, tasked with helping the U.S. military, yet deeply connected to their own people's struggles for survival. Today we'll hear the battle as it unfolded through the eyes of young Hawk, a perspective that shakes the foundations of what many think they know about Custer's last stand. As Custer's troops descended into the Bighorn Valley, tension among the scouts was palpable. Young Hawk, along with his fellow scouts, was acutely aware of the looming conflict. They were sent out ahead to scout the Sioux camp, an encampment filled with thousands of men, women, and children. Custer's goal was clear: launch a surprise attack and seize their horses, rendering them unable to flee or fight back. One of the older scouts, stabbed, tried to reassure the younger men. He reminded them to stay focused and follow Custer's orders, no matter how daunting the task seemed. But even he couldn't predict the sheer magnitude of the battle to come. Meanwhile, Custer famously told his men, "Boys, you are in for a grueling day. Steel your nerves, for you shall gain valuable experience today." Little did they know that this experience would be one of the bloodiest confrontations they would ever face, and for many, their last. As the battle began to unfold, young Hawk recalled a pivotal moment, the sound of the bugle cutting through the air, signaling the charge. The 7th Cavalry, scouts, and soldiers advanced as one force, with flags flying high above the ridge. The scouts, including young Hawk, descended into a dry coulee, a shallow ravine leading toward the Sioux camp. This would be the moment when everything changed. Strikes 2, a fellow scout, let out a war whoop, rallying the scouts forward. Young Hawk, too, joined the charge, his heart pounding as he tore through the camp. His first significant act in the battle came when he knocked down a teepee, revealing a body wrapped in a buffalo robe inside. It was a haunting image, one that symbolized the clash between worlds, between life and death, tradition and warfare. At this point, the battle descended into chaos. Native scouts like Young Hawk and the US soldiers became a whirlwind of movement, pushing through the camp. Young Hawk could sense the tension building, the quiet before the inevitable storm that would soon break in full force. The battle escalated quickly. Young Hawk's account takes us through a scene that many have only imagined. The soldiers forming a thin line with the scouts positioned nearby. But on the other side of the battlefield, Dakota warriors emerged from over the ridge, preparing to meet the invaders head-on. What followed was a brutal confrontation, with lives hanging in the balance. In the heat of battle, Young Hawk found himself claiming a Dakota warrior's horse after the warrior had fallen. He quickly passed the horse to his friend, Big Belly, a small victory amidst the chaos. But even this fleeting moment of triumph was overshadowed by the sight of hundreds of Dakota warriors streaming down the ridge, ready to attack. Custer's troops were outnumbered, and soon a sense of desperation set in. Young Hawk and his fellow scouts, including Bob-tailed Bull and Half-Yellow Face, found themselves caught in a deadly retreat. With the Dakota forces hot on their trail, the scouts and soldiers crossed the river and took refuge in a patch of timber, a place that would become their temporary stronghold as they prepared for a grim last stand. One of the most intense moments of Young Hawk's account comes during this final standoff. As the Dakota warriors pressed closer, Young Hawk fired his rifle at them, once, twice, drawing their attention and fire. He quickly dove for cover behind a tree, knowing that his life now hung by a thread. Amid the confusion, Goose, Young Hawk's cousin, was wounded, and his groans of pain echoed through the timber. There was no turning back now. Young Hawk had accepted that he might not survive the day, but he was determined to go down fighting. The Dakota warriors tried to set the grass on fire to flush out the remaining scouts and soldiers, but Young Hawk and the others stood firm, returning fire from their makeshift defenses. As the battle raged on, Young Hawk managed to shoot and kill a Dakota warrior and his horse, a significant moment of triumph amid the overwhelming tide of the battle. His cry echoed through the air, a victory shout rooted deep in his Arikara heritage, a reminder of his connection to his people even in this complex and chaotic moment. When the dust finally settled, the Dakotas had taken the ridge, and Custer's forces lay in ruins. Young Hawk, carrying a makeshift white flag of surrender, was shot at by both sides as he attempted to return to the pack train. The scene was one of utter devastation. Young Hawk's account ends on a sobering note, describing the bodies of fallen soldiers and scouts scattered across the battlefield. It was a bitter reminder of the senseless bloodshed that had taken place, a battle that left no true victors, only survivors trying to make sense of the carnage around them. Young Hawk's account stands as a sobering reminder of the realities of Custer's last stand. While popular history often glorifies Custer and his men as tragic heroes, the truth, told through Native American eyes, is far more complex. Young Hawk's story, like so many others, reveals the brutality, desperation, and humanity of the scouts and warriors who fought on both sides of this battle. For too long, Native voices like Young Hawk's have been silenced, lost amid the mythologies of the Wild West. But by sharing his story, we honor the memory of those who lived through this pivotal moment in history. Let this be a reminder that Native Americans were not just footnotes in history. They were active participants, defenders of their land, and storytellers of their own legacy. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue learning about Native American history and culture, be sure to like this video, subscribe to EyeRich History, and hit that notification bell. Let's keep this history alive and share these important stories with the world. See you in the next video.